Hi, everyone, and welcome to Practice Growth HQ. Now, today we're going to talk about the key to you achieving your objectives in your business. Like, what is the thing that you're shooting for? Do you want to grow a bit faster? Do you want to make a bigger impact on the world? Well, one of the absolute keys that we're going to talk about today is achieving high-performing teams. We see it in elite sport, we see it in lots of different fields, but we can absolutely see it in healthcare as well. And there are lots of steps involved, and the perfect person to talk about this is my guest, Cory Geffre. Now, Cory is a healthcare executive, he's an author, he's trained as a registered nurse, and he's a straight shooter with nearly 30 years experience leading teams. So we know that he's a guy we should be listening to. All the way from, as far as I know, a state I've never interviewed anyone before today, from North Dakota, Grand Forks. Welcome, Cory.
Well, thank you so much for having me. The weather's actually nice here today. You wouldn't expect it. You think it's cold all the time. It's actually beautiful here today. Really excited to see how maybe the things that I've learned could serve your listeners.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. All right, Cory. Well, we like to start with the fast five, kind of quicker questions, quicker answers, so people can get to know you quickly. Question one, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, which is tucked into the northeast corner of South Dakota. Spent a little time in Texas, but have really only lived in the central part of the United States, pretty much from top to bottom.
There you are. Now, look, listeners, if you're not familiar, Dakotas, I believe they're slightly west of middle, but absolutely right up the top of the US. And apart from, I mean, I assume they're the least populated states in the US. Is that true, Cory?
They are among the least populated, with about 1.5 million people between the two states.
Okay, there we are. So yes, it's a kind of a smaller town area. All right, let's keep going. Question two, Cory, what's your favorite book besides your own?
I would say The Four Disciplines of Execution. That was my favorite book. There's not a better book that I've read on how to actually get stuff done and move from talking about it to actually doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a big favorite of mine. I've got a whole bunch of Patrick Lencioni books over my shoulder here. In terms of an author, firstly, it's in a fable style, so it's just so easy to
Yep.
read. But secondly, he just sort of gets to the root of the issue so effectively. All right, question three, Cory. What's one of your superpowers?
I really think the superpower that I've developed is to see around corners in healthcare. There are things that people are coming at us so fast. The ability to just see around to that next corner, to see what maybe that next break is or innovation. That's a superpower that I've seemed to develop, the ability to predict the future a little bit, so to speak, without
Mm,
being all weird and superstitious, but just
mm.
rapidly evaluating data to make a really strong hypothesis about something that's going to happen in the future.
Good one. Well, we all need a dose of that. Question four, something you wish your 20-year-old self knew.
It's a marathon and not a sprint. I still move way too fast for most people, but early on in my career, I didn't appreciate that. So people got whiplash, even though we were moving in the right direction. People got whiplash at the start. And so I just needed to slow myself down.
Okay, it's a very interesting insight. And then finally, question five, something you're grateful for.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to lead people. I don't think there's any better or bigger calling for a human than to have the opportunity to influence other humans, the highest life form. That to me is just an honor. And sometimes I just have to pinch myself that I have the ability to do that every day.
It's an interesting one. You've already said a couple of things that I've just not heard from anybody else on the podcast. I think up at about episode 150. So I'm really looking forward to what's coming. I will admit to you that I really enjoy leading my teams. I'm not, some people sort of loathe it, and maybe you're in the wrong job if that's you. But I probably self-analyze a bit and go, I was thinking about a meeting I was in yesterday, which I was running, and I don't know, there might have been a pinch of you in me, Cory, because I was talking about urgency. And in a commercial environment, I mean, we do need to have a sense of urgency about what we do, not when we're with the patient. You need to slow it down and deliver a great service. But in terms of wherever it is that you want to get to, the reality is that the levels of competition in so many areas are growing. The potential for some of the things you're doing to be getting overtaken by technology, et cetera, et cetera. But then I'm sort of thinking to myself, okay, but how did that come across the individuals and were they on board, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you're right on the the money there, which leads beautifully into our topic for today, which is about high functioning teams. Now, you've worked in a healthcare environment for a long, long time. What is the difference between a high functioning team and one that's not going very well?
Well, the first litmus test is, can you get results? Doesn't matter how great a team says they are. If there's not evidence, then they are not yet a great team. So I think the first piece that you have to look for is, have they achieved results? And then the second one, which we maybe could pay a little bit more attention to, is how did they achieve those results? Is there just scorched earth, carnage, destroying of relationships for the sake of getting results? That's a tenuous one, but also one that's the only way to get repeatable results. So if you're just
Mm.
achieving a goal one time, the scorched earth method may work, but doing the type of work that we do in healthcare, you have to continuously get high level results. So you can't do it in a method that kind of burns those relationships.
Okay, which begs the question, Cory, how do we do that?
I think the hardest thing about leadership or really leading people is that you have imperfect people leading imperfect people
Mm.
with the goal of a perfect result. So just you don't even have to be a math major to know that's a really difficult equation. Yet, if everyone has the great intentions and putting forward great effort, you sometimes can be more successful than not. So I think we have to remember that when we're leading people, we're leading all of the experiences that they've had. And the word trauma has been overused, but I just say life experiences, whatever they are, positive, negative, but everyone's experience is different. So you really think leadership is that ultimate melting pot where you have maybe sometimes 40 or 50, but at least a half dozen personalities that you have to try to mesh and get going in the same direction for a common result. It is almost an impossible scenario, which is part of the reason that it gets me so excited.
I love your take on this. So you're absolutely right. I mean, especially when you've been working for some time, you've worked with so many different personality types. And I suppose what happens is when you do manage to bring everybody along on the journey and we achieve the goal, I've got a couple of companies that work alongside each other. And last week we launched a website. Actually, it's to do with serving the US, Cory. It was I think I'm right in saying either first or one of the first US websites that we produced. And a lot of research went into it, and then lots of players, and the guys ended up having a pizza party afterwards, which was, I was like, yeah, like, let's celebrate. Isn't that? Because one of the things I notice is, especially the entrepreneurial types, I dare say you may be in this camp too, as you go, yay, I achieved that thing. Right, what's next? We don't take a moment to celebrate. And when you win with a team, I know some of us are a bit more individualistic and some of us are a bit more team-based, but it's so rewarding when you actually do, you go, everybody played their part. It came together for something amazing.
You brought up a great point, and maybe not everyone will fully appreciate this example, but we're having a melting pot of generations as well, not just personalities and
Mm.
experiences, but melting pot of generations. And each generation is motivated by different things. And I'm not one that will say this generation has better work ethic than this. Each generation has different priorities. And so one of the things that I've really realized is with the newest workforce generation, they were celebrated often and a lot. And you could make the argument too much or not for the right things. And so the expression that I use is when you get a win and you want to continue to support the type of behavior that you want, you need to celebrate it like poopy in the potty. And so if you think about what that's like when you're potty training a child and there's that successful thing, and it shouldn't be a big deal because it's a normal human thing that we need you to do, but we just celebrate the heck out of it. And if you think about that sometimes it has to feel almost ridiculous what you're celebrating. But as a parent of a young child, that celebration's authentic because you're meeting them where they are and you're trying to really encourage that behavior. And so this sometimes is difficult for high performers from a different generation. You're like, look, I don't want to give participation trophies or suckers for people doing their job. Okay, it's okay if you don't want to, but do they need it to stay motivated and engaged and dialed in? Maybe someday someone will prove me wrong, but nobody's ever left a company because they've been celebrated too much. That's
Yeah.
never been an exit survey. I've never received feedback about could you please stop sending us so much praise and really recognizing our team. So I don't think that there probably is a point where it's too much, but I haven't yet achieved it in my organization. I'm the poopy in the potty celebrator type guy, particularly for this next generation.
Yeah, good for you. That's hilarious. I've never heard that. I completely get the sentiment. I've had children. I have children, but that's a long time ago that we were toilet training them, as we would call it. But I get what you're saying. I guess celebrate the small wins is probably the message.
Mhm.
All right, so we've set the scene. We know that in some ways the highs can be higher if we achieve it as a team, and that we need to not only achieve that objective once, but do it sustainably again and again. What are some of the things that the listeners are going to face that get in the road? They're like, okay, that's well done, boys. You've set the framework here, but like this is hard. It's hard to achieve this. How do I get good staff? How do I get them to work together and stick together?
Yeah, this is, well, I think the first important thing to realize is that you're not going to solve the equation. One of the best things that you can hope for is for there to be just less amounts of confusion and communication gaps because we're trying to strive for perfection. And as I mentioned earlier, it's almost an impossible equation to solve. So if you just set your bars for saying we're going to do everything that we can to have this operation run as smooth as possible every day, that should be the expectation. Again, not perfection. There are seeds that you need to plant that you're not going to harvest until next year. So I just tell everybody, if you aren't spending a portion of your day or week building a bench, and this means pressure testing new staff or developing staff to see what their
Mhm.
level of tolerance is, how they respond to stress. So you have to be sure that you're spending time developing people. And one of the skills that I'm surprised that many leaders aren't great at is really managing performance. People are watching when someone shows up late, misperforms,
Mm.
underperforms, has a bad interaction with a client or a patient. People are watching what happens. And if you wait to only use these large responses, like after X number of situations, they're going to be terminated or fired. That's not the type of behavior that you want. Correction in the moment on a small deviation is actually, people really appreciate that. It's really coaching. If you think about if a coach just waited until you made enough mistakes that they cut you from the team,
Mhm.
we wouldn't
Mhm.
call that coaching.
Mhm.
And so, what are those little steps along the way? And I'll stop somebody in real time and I'll be like, I don't love the tone at which this is coming. Can we just step back and just start from the beginning one more time? And just those little pieces of correction. And again, hopefully you have enough relational equity with people that they know that you're doing it for their betterment, not for your satisfaction. That's an important delineation. And I'll say this working in healthcare with mostly women, women have less of a tolerance for leaders who don't have their best interest in mind. That doesn't seem to be as much of a turnoff for men, but for women, if they feel that what your motivations are selfish, that's not going to respond well. They have to know that you want the best for them. It's that management along the way. It's not micromanagement, but it's being sure that you provide feedback and coaching around all the little things that you see. So when you put kind of those two pieces together, you start to see a team form.
Mhm.
And it really takes those first two steps, developing people, managing performance, before you can get to this third part where you're putting people together. Now, it's human nature to love people who are like us. When in reality, when you're putting a team together, you need to have one person on that team that you respect, but that is constantly irritating you. And you just need, that's just kind of the pressure check. And it's funny because in the real world, many of us marry that type of person, right? The one person who gave us really honest feedback and is not afraid to do it for multiple decades, right? We call that marriage, and many of those are successful. But you really need someone who you have trust in, and you know that they're not doing for selfish motivations, but will tell you, like, hey, that message really didn't sit well with the
Yeah,
staff.
yeah.
I think you need to come back and make another attack at that. And so being sure that you're building a team that has varying talent, varying experience, varying talent is key. If you build a team that's just like you, then you've actually made it about yourself. So to me,
Mm.
those are kind of like the one, two, three of the managing the people portion of getting great outcomes and really getting results that you want.
Wow, that's a fantastic answer to that question, Corey. We're going to break those down because I have so many questions as I'm listening to those. Now, look, Corey, the more I'm hearing from you, the more I feel like you and I are somewhat cut from the same cloth. I am a pretty straight shooter. I try to be kind, but I'm fairly direct. And for me as a manager, I'm going to say now, it's not difficult for me to say, to provide that feedback. Hey, Jimmy, I noticed you were 5 minutes late for the meeting. There's 8 of us in that meeting. That 5 minutes, I've got to multiply that by 8. That's cost us 40 minutes. Can you be on time, please? And you can deliver it in a way where I suspect if you can deliver it more quickly, you're less likely to over marinated in your mind, which means hopefully you can keep the emotion relatively low and they go, hey, it was a conversation about 5 minutes. He's not saying it's the end of the world. Thanks for the feedback. I'll be better. But Cory, there are a bunch of people listening to this who go, yeah, but I just find it really hard to provide that feedback to people. What do you say to those people?
Well, I'm going to go back to the relationships that are most impactful for us. So maybe you have kids, maybe you have a spouse, maybe you just have parents or uncles or friends. Those are the people that we care about so much that we say, hey, you have a piece of spinach in your
Yeah.
teeth. Or, hey, you need to zip up your pants. And so those are really uncomfortable conversations. But because we care about the person so
Mm,
much, we
mm,
remove ourselves from it. So, not giving feedback to somebody because we're scared of how they will take it is actually foundationally selfish. You're
mm.
making it about how you could potentially feel about their reaction. They have to own their reaction. You have to own the activity of giving them feedback. And so it is tough, but you do just have to kind of flip that switch a little bit because small problems always become big problems when they're not addressed. And so if you love big problems, I love solving problems, but I don't love solving a lot of big problems. So if you love solving big problems, just let that little stuff go. You'll have an opportunity to manage it later, but it's not going to be any more fun later. It's actually going to be less fun. So I love getting those in real time. And when you get really good at that, so today I had 2 text messages from people who report to people to me. So I'm a VP. I have managers who report to a director, and the directors report to me. I had 2 managers that said, hey, do you have any feedback for me from that meeting earlier today?
Wow.
So people really like someone who knows, has their best interest in mind.
Mm.
And the joke that I always say is, I'm somebody who always gets asked, do I look fat in this dress? And people know that I will give them an honest opinion
Right.
around that, and it'll come from a place so people will start to seek out feedback. So my team, anytime they give a presentation to a group, they know that I take notes. I have a little notebook that I carry in my pocket.
Mm.
I'm always taking notes, maybe about their ums, maybe about their body position, maybe about their slide having too many things on it. And they know that I take notes, and I only share notes with them now when they ask. So they say, hey, do you have any notes from me? I'd be like, actually, I do. Or, nope, I don't have any notes. But now we've developed enough relationship that they know feedback is available if they want it.
Mm.
Me leading with that potentially makes it feel like it's a performance conversation.
Yeah.
But if they want to get better, I've got notes. And I have a date at the top and I have a note, and we might talk about it at our next meeting together if they bring it up. But once you get a reputation for providing authentic, helpful feedback, people will seek it out in a way where you will have a burden now to be keeping track of every opportunity to get better. So I think people would be surprised at what it's like to be someone who people trust and want the opinion of all the time. It's exhilarating, and it's also an easy way to tell your high performers from your not so high performers. High performers hate feedback, but want tons of it.
Right. How interesting. Well, gosh, again, you've just given us so much there. Look, I think here's what I take away from that. Firstly, you've got to have their best interests in mind. I mean, the reason why people are coming back to Cory and saying, hey, have you got feedback is because they've learned from the past that he will deliver the message in a way that's fairly objective. I don't know how I'd go if someone says to me, "Do I look good in this dress?" and I think they don't. That to me seems very dangerous ground. I'll say, you know what? I know a guy in North Dakota. Let me put you onto him. Look, I have two other comments about the listeners who are struggling to provide that feedback about poor performance. I mean, we've already talked about the fact that if it's delivered from a place of kindness, I think that's really important. And it's a lot better to deliver it when it's small than when it builds up, because then you'll end up too much emotion enters into it and the message gets lost. But two other thoughts. The first is I have said to people when I'm providing that feedback, even if I can sense they're feeling a little bit hurt at the feedback, I say to them, look, the truth is, if I'm sitting in your chair, I would want to know. If my supervisor's somehow not happy with me, then I'd want to know. So, that's why I'm telling you. So maybe that'll soften the blow. The other thing is, if you continue to ignore this for an extended period, this is what I know, and it's backed up by a whole bunch of research. Like, the fastest way to get rid of your top performers is to let your underperformers get away with it. Because the top performers go, hey, I'm working hard here, like I'm turning up on time, I'm not goofing off, it's high productivity while I'm here. And what I see around me is a management team that lets poor performance go unchecked. And I go, well, why should I keep going? And so it's, even if you think, oh, it's only that person and maybe they're being a little bit less efficient than they could be, the fact is other people see, and that impact is right across the organization. So there's some excellent points there. All right, have the brave conversations. Now, going back to your 3 steps then. The first was about managing performance, and by all means give credit where credit's due, but if the performance is lower than it needs to be, we've spoken about giving that honest feedback. Just remind us of the second step, Cory.
So the first one's developing people. The second one's managing performance.
Oh, beg your pardon?
Yep. To me, that's where your opportunity is to leave a legacy. Whether it's your practice, your group, a place where you're working or you're part of right now, your best succession plan, your best leadership legacy is in developing people. I'm super excited that I've had about 30 directors report to me over the course of the last 10 years. 5 of them are now vice presidents, and I was the reference for them all. That to me is a leadership legacy I'm super proud of. And people know, and I've had people switch divisions to come work with me because they know that I'm going to do everything I can to get them promoted. And it may not even be within our same organization. 4 of those were in organizations outside of our organizations. And that actually creates a little law of attraction where other people are really interested in that. So I think that is, I'll admit, that's probably the one area where I could look myself in the mirror and just say, hey, is it about you or is it about them? And I think the evidence is it is about them. They all are having opportunities to promote, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm not having a proud papa moment about a part that I played in their development. And this kind of goes back to the last point that we were making is none of us are yet the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be. And so if you believe that you are not yet the best possible version, and someone says, I think I have a tip or a trick or a hint to help you become a better version of yourself, I'm not so sure that I want to hang out with people who are say, no, thanks. I'm good. I'm currently as good as I ever want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that thirst. And again, really focusing on developing people, building a bench. Sometimes we have these superstars. We have these once in a lifetime talent within our practice, and they leave. And it creates a vacuum for 7 or 8 years. It's like a sucking sound. You could just hear it when they leave the organization, whether it's retirement. And it's our responsibility as leaders to be sure that we get to miss somebody, but we don't have to miss them. And that's why it's really important that you're developing people at probably a 5-to-1 rate. If you have one phenomenal leader, you should have 3 to 5 people that you're developing behind that. Because one of them may leave, one of them may decide to go in a different career. Like there's too much vulnerability to only be developing one for one. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make, or they declare the succession plan too early before the person's had a chance to fully develop. So developing people is an area that if you're in this for the long haul, and I would say the long haul now isn't 30 years, it's probably 7 to 10 years is now a long haul.
Right.
You need to be developing people at a really, really fast rate.
Yeah. Look, I we've implemented, particularly over the last 6 months, we had a development system in place, but it probably wasn't where it needed to be. And so we've implemented it across the whole, well, both companies. And so all of the staff have development plans, an annual one, and they must meet with their supervisor every quarter and sort of work their way through it. And I think one of the main messages that I deliver to my team, I'm going to try and do this and not be overly dramatic. The sentiment is basically don't you dare go through the motions. If you've got a person sitting with you, we're talking about their life. Like, dude, this is not a box ticking exercise. This is a genuine chance for you to sit down with that person and say, where do you want to get to? What do you want? What are your hopes and dreams, et cetera, et cetera? You need some trust there because if they don't trust you, they're not going to tell you what their hopes and dreams are. But I'm now coaching the managers, and it's been very interesting to see the kind of reaction that their team members get. And I sort of keep saying to them, they will engage in this process as much as they believe you care and that you're going through it. But do not just go, oh, here we go, here's this thing we have to do. I mean, I worked in government for many years, Cory, and in many cases, you couldn't get your annual increase unless you'd been through one of those, but you'd end up with these exercises that was, as I said, it was just box checking. It's kind of sit down, discuss these 3 points. Yep, 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 sounds good, bang. Signature here, thank God I got my increase. And that is, I'm dead against that. And certainly so far, because we've been able to get people to open up with us and say what their dreams are, then we can start to put these development plans in place. And as you say, it's possible you've got one position that needs filling in the future where you may have to have 3 or 4 people sort of who've got that aspiration and you just kind of build them up over time. Now, Cory, unfortunately, we are starting to run out of time. We've had a good chat about developing people. We've talked a lot about managing performance. Just go back to that third one again.
Which is really the building of the teams.
Right.
Developing people, managing performance, building teams, putting that together. And I think that the current environment of free agency, just pick your sport, where nobody plays their entire career for a sports team anymore, where everyone's a free agent. Our people are free agents every single day. There are all sorts of opportunities. And so when I hear college and professional sports really complaining about the fact that nobody's committed anymore and everyone's transferring after 1 year, and I just say, welcome to the world that the rest of us have been living in. And so when you build a team, it is not static. It is dynamic. People are going through different things. You have people who are on leave. You have people who have already quit but haven't told you, whether that's psychological quitting or actually just haven't given you their notice. You have all these dynamics. And so be sure that building team isn't just a place that you're trying to get. It's a constant journey. So I'm a huge fan of the Rubik's Cube. I always keep them in all of my desks and offices. And I tell people that our job is to actually solve that Rubik's Cube as quick as we can every day, knowing that it will be completely messed up tomorrow. We won't come back into it still solved. As a matter of fact, there might be pieces missing. Someone may have peeled the stickers off. Like there's sometimes there's things in there that you just can't believe that it happened. Our job is to focus on solving the Rubik's Cube. I worked for a Catholic healthcare association one time and had an opportunity to work with a bunch of the nuns. And one of the things that they said is life's easy if you just meet the need of the day. Man, that's a great leadership lesson. It's a great life lesson. It's a great lesson, everything. Like way, way too much time worrying about things in the past or in the future. Let's just meet the need of the day. We have patients that need us. We have people that need us. We have someone who just needs a little bit more attention today. Let's just meet the need of the day.
Well, Cory, that sounds like a good place for us to finish off. If people want to learn more or get in touch with you, what should they do?
The best place would be my website, corygeffre.com, and you'll be able to find some information there. I love connecting with people. I love just answering questions, and I really appreciate the invite and the time to spend with you today.
Oh, absolutely. All right, let's just confirm everyone because the spelling's a little tricky. So Cory, then Geffre is Geffre.com. That's correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for your time, Cory. I knew at the start of the interview this was going to be a great interview. You've absolutely delivered. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right, everyone. Well, we've covered a lot there, haven't we? And I hope that what you're left with is some real inspiration to go and achieve a higher performing team at your office. But as I like to say every week, it's not knowledge that's power, it's applied knowledge that's power, which begs the question, what's one thing you can do? Go and take action of that. Make sure you do that before you go into the next thing. Finally, if you got some value from our time together today, then I'd really appreciate if you'd head to where you're listening to this show, leave us a lovely review to give us the encouragement to bring you more great content every week on Practice Growth HQ.